The other things that it represents is the nighttime, right? Darkness, more secretive or mysterious thing. Yin is also considered anything that is slow or cold. It's also wet. Today we're going to be talking about some of the basic principles of Chinese medicine, which are the 5 elements and also yin and yang. So these are really a foundation of what Chinese medicine is built on. It's a way to categorize things or understand relationships in things in the universe. I am going to go ahead and dive into it. Okay, so here are the 5 elements. Quite often you will see them presented in a wheel or a circle, right? Because it is a way to show you how things can proceed or transform. So Chinese medicine really likes to speak in symbols or metaphors to help us better understand the meaning of things. Giving things a symbol or a metaphor helps us understand them and really digest them better and also remember them. So I like to start with wood because wood, it's spring anyways, which is, the wood element. It's really the beginning. It's childhood, right? This is where we all start off. The wood element is represented by the season spring. It's also represented by the color green. It also brings, the idea of a fresh newness to everything. So the spring is represented by the liver and gallbladder meridians in our bodies. It holds the emotions of anger, resentment, courage, compassion, and kindness. These are some of the things that we see in relationship to the wood element. So that wood element can also affect our eyes, our ligaments and tendons, and how flexible they are, as well as our flexibility mentally. So that's something to keep in mind if you have trouble in any of those areas, that your wood element may be affected. So next comes fire, and so what comes after spring is summer. With summer, we think of the color red in Chinese medicine, right? We think of emotions such as joy, and they also say agitation, right? And so with agitation, it's more of not so much necessary irritability, but more of just kind of overstimulated. That's what I tend to think of. Also in Chinese medicine, summer is represented by the heart and small intestine. The heart in Chinese medicine also is in charge of the Shen, which we consider the spirit. So I don't know if you ever heard, but the song Summertime Sadness by Lana Del Rey is kind of a great example, right, of some of the issues we can see in the summer. It's our spirits, if they're high or low, heart or fire meridians are struggling, we'll see issues also with our spirits in the summertime. The fire element is also in charge of things like laughter as well as hate. So these are 2 things to keep in mind. Okay, moving on to the earth element is what Chinese medicine considers late summer. So, we kind of think of the time at the end of summer where you're harvesting a lot of vegetables, right? Especially watery vegetables. And things are really kind of at their peak. And it's also very, hot and damp outside a lot of times. Dampness is something that is related to the earth element. The meridians related to the earth element are the stomach and spleen. So we'll see issues with the stomach and spleen a lot of times in this late summer period. Some of the emotions related to the earth element are emotions that have to do with nurturing and trusting. And on the flip side, also things such as worry and, overthinking, kind of over-worrying and overthinking about things, kind of the idea of that you're having thoughts that you just can't digest. You just can't, you go over the same thoughts and over and over and over in your head, and you're not able to, let it go on to the next stage, which is letting them go. So moving on to the next stage of letting go is the metal element. So the metal element is associated with the fall season or autumn. In the fall, we tend to see a lot of issues come up with the skin and lungs. So those are 2 parts of the body that the metal element is in charge of. And also the metal element is in charge of the large intestine, right? It really has a lot to do with being able to let things go. Can you cut out the things that are not necessary in your life? And also with the metal element, you can think of it kind of like a bucket, right? You can think of things of storage, right? So what things are important to store or to hold on to. The metal element also has to do with the sense of justice. So a lot of times when people feel like they've been done wrong, they will have issues with the metal element and processing those emotions. Moving on to the last of the 5 elements is water. So water is in charge of the kidneys and bladder. Now again, these organs are not literal organs necessarily in our body, but the organ or the meridians. The kidneys and bladder are in charge of the life force or the life energy that we're born with, that we're given from our parents. So some of the things that the water element deals with is the feeling of fear. So I think this is a big one, especially today. A lot of people have a lot of fear of the future or of the unknown, and so we'll see a lot of times like low back pain and things like that. The water element is also in charge of the idea of death and rebirth. So that idea sometimes even with the fear of death. So on the flip side of that, we can also say that water element is in charge of the idea of wisdom. Are we wise enough to go ahead and have faith in the future and faith in things to not be afraid and be fearful. The water element is also in charge of our ears and bones. Obviously, it's also associated with the water that we, get rid of. So then after the water element, again, we have the wood. So you can see that this process never ends. And so I speak a lot about in Chinese medicine that, life isn't linear. We don't live in a linear world, even though the West would like to have that idea present. Everything's cyclical. Everything in life is cyclical, whether it's human beings themselves, the universe, nature, relationships, everything is cyclical. When you want to observe or understand where you are, where things are in the world, you can reference the 5 elements and see, based off of certain emotions or symbols, where you're at in the cycle. So I decided to make it super easy for you guys, and I have created a 5 element reference sheet for you guys. If you want to go ahead and check out my link below, it's a free download and you can have that as an easy reference. It included some extra little bonuses that I didn't speak about today, but I think it'll help you guys out a lot. We'll go ahead and take a look at what these things mean and how they're metaphorically spoken about. Okay, so the next way to categorize or things that are spoken about metaphorically is the concept of yin and yang. Yin and yang, basically everything can be divided, either it's yin or it's yang. It's just another way to categorize things or to understand them and how they function and how they relate to other things. So even out of the 5 elements, each element is either yin or it's either yang. It has 2 sides, right? There's 2 sides to every coin. So first we'll talk about yin. So, in Western world, it's not really yin things aren't really valued or prized, but some of the things that yin is, right? So when we think of what is yin, right? It is the feminine. The other things that it represents is the nighttime, right? Darkness. More secretive or mysterious thing. Yin is also considered anything that is slow or cold. It's also wet. Yin, it is still and receiving. The idea of it's not an action thing, right? Because that would be considered yang. It's something that it can hold the space and just accept, right? It's very intuitive and flexible. It's flowing. It's also submissive and retreating. Being able, like I said, to not just go forward, but to also know when to step back and take a break. It's also emotional. So I will now talk about what things make up yang. So yang is considered masculine things, right? So it's the male. It's bright, it's loud, it's fast, it's outgoing, it's progressive, hot, dry. It's motion, right? It gives or provides. It is also considered, resistant and direct, straightforward. It is very analytical or logical and not so intuitive as yin is. Yeah, just more aggressive. So you can kind of see these concepts in really everything. So like I said, it's just another way to categorize or understand how things work. And so there's a masculine side or a male side and a feminine side or a female side. And these are kind of the way things can be understood and categorized, and everything is this way or that way. One thing about Chinese medicine that I really want to focus on too is that it's not religious. So there's no concept of this is right and this is wrong and this is good and this is bad and this is how things should be. In Chinese medicine, there's no right or wrong way. It's just an observation of how things are and, you know, how the universe is. So there's no need to say, oh, well, why is feminine considered negative or considered bad or, you know, not positive? If you noticed when I was speaking about yin and yang, there is positive attributes to yin and there's also negative attributes. It's flexible, and being flexible is great, right? You have the ability to be more adaptable, but it is also mysterious and unpredictable. You know, that could be considered a negative side. And same thing with yang, right? So it is something that is giving and protective, but it's also can be, on the flip side, aggressive. Like I said, in Chinese medicine, there's no good or bad or right or wrong. Those are kind of more moral judgments that we associate with them based on our society and our cultures, but it's not really a judgment of a moral standard. Like I said, those are really just observations of, you know, how the universe works. With that, I also have a instant downloadable reference sheet to what yin and yang is and some of the things that I mentioned today. So I hope that you guys can go ahead and check out my information below. These principles affect even things like your food, right? So when we think about food, these are the basics to understanding, you know, how each ingredient affects our body and in turn affects our moods and emotions and well-being. So these are really great things like to have, very basic and fundamental to everything that I will be talking about. So I hope you guys found that helpful today, and I will talk to you soon. All right, thanks guys.